Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, humans of the universe. You are on the sidelines with the sideline guys. And today, people, today I'm joined by my brother in Negronis, a man that I look forward to seeing every week, despite how much he thinks. It it puts a sour note on my week. The man, the myth, the legend, my guy, Sean Negron. How are you?
Dude, I'm good, man. Everything's good. It's definitely a different scenery for both of us. I know we said that in the last episode, but it's good, man. We're pushing forward. Everything's working out for the both of us. We're all taking our steps forward. We're still repping New York as much as we can, even though we're not there. But everything's good, man. Another UFC card. Another. This is a good one. This is not no Apex bullshit. This is actually a good card. I'm excited for this one. It's tough to drag me out for that Apex where we're talking about maybe one interesting fight. Everyone else we're like, dude, they could all get cut tonight. I would never care. So it's like when you get cards like these, it's a lot of fun to break them down.
Heck yeah, I was surprisingly shocked at how deep this card is. Right, we got names top to bottom, so a lot to look forward to in that way. And I love that you mentioned the New Yorkness off the top, right? Because that's one of my favorite things to do on a daily basis, right? Like they must be so tired of me already, constantly bringing up how when I was back home or in New York, it's like this. Like no matter what, I'm always making sure everybody knows that I'm that motherfucking guy from the Bronx, baby. So
You know what's so funny about that is that I do that here, and like I always think to myself like, is it really just that much different in New York than it is anywhere else? Because like the way people move around here is so different, and it's like I will say the same thing, and I'm so self conscious. I talk about this all the time, and I'm like, yeah, but the way we do it back in New York, it ain't like that. And they'd be like, again with New York. I'm like,
exactly,
I
yeah,
don't know what you want from me. Like, this is different. It's different here.
yeah.
So it's so funny that you say shit like that because it really is like that where it's New York or nowhere.
Yeah, 100%. And if you've never been, you won't understand, ladies and gentlemen. My favorite highlight, and we'll move on. But my favorite highlight of all these New York escapades, I was talking, and then this one lady, she's a very sweet older woman, and she's like, "Is it dangerous out there?" And then I gave her one of my favorite lines. That's one of my favorite things to say to anyone. I was like, "It's dangerous anywhere. You just got to be aware." So yeah, that's the truth, and that's what New
It's
York
true.
teaches you, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh yeah.
But with all of that fun stuff out the way, we got some more colloquial notes to hit before we move on. We've got, of course, following the brand at OTS Media Co. on all social media platforms, OTS Media on YouTube, so you never miss all of the dope shows we've got coming your way consistently. I got at least two shows a week coming to you for the next 4 weeks. Might even be up to 3 to 4 on certain weeks. That's just how we gotta let the thing swing on OTS Media Co. So make sure you're following so you don't miss of all the dope stuff we got going on. And with that same breadth, why don't you follow me at Negron MMA on Twitter as well as TikTok and Chris Negron underscore on Instagram. So where can the people find you, Sean?
Well, first off, follow this guy. All right, this guy's the future of MMA right here. All right, he's going to lead you to the promised land. If you ever need someone to bet on, if there was like a early bet on history on who's gonna make it, it's this guy right here, man. This dude is the future. He's like that needle in what is it? Needle in the rough? Is that what they fucking say?
The
I don't know.
diamond in the rough,
Diamond in the
baby.
rough. Diamond in the rough. Needle in the haystack. That's what it is. I combined the two.
Yep.
In the rough where this you don't know him yet, but you will. And these will be the origin stories. I was just saying this to him off air, but this is follow this guy, all right? If you could find me because Twitter has taken me away because apparently I did something offensive for having the same last name as you. So it's besides that, I guess find me at bsreports.org if you ever want to get involved in sports writing or in the sports business in any way. Hit me up there, and I will help you get started.
You heard the man. Make sure you take advantage of all the lovely resources he has for the community because I know I need to, ladies and gentlemen. So take my advice, right? I am in a unique position to advise you in that way. And now, before we move on to the main event, right, the reason why we're all here, I just want to remind you all that this week, the show is sponsored by Shroom Bar, the protein mushroom bar. No, sir, it's not made up of psychedelics, but instead 4 powerful mushroom adaptogens: lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, turkey tail, all of that wrapped in a lovely bar that gives you 12 grams of protein and the energy rush you need to pick you up after your MMA training session, to pick you up after your long day at the office. Whatever rush of energy you need, take the Shroom Bar, and you can do that by going to eatshroombar.com and using code OTS at checkout for 30% off of your first order. You heard that, the big 3-0, ladies and gentlemen. So make sure you're locked in and support the brand that supports you and your health. But with all that out of the way, I know Sean's like, damn, we made it big time. We got fucking sponsors now. Yeah, I threw that one on you. I didn't even give you the heads up because I got you. I got some details to give you. But we are here, as Sean said, to discuss UFC Fight Night London, Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady. Now, before we get into that, it's only right that we give our recap, we give our standings updates. And I know Sean is smiling about this one, right? Because it's the first week since the beginning of this month that my guy caught a dub, right? It's been a while. But hey, he's coming back and coming on
take
strong.
Take it where you can, man.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. That last card hurt me, but it was good for my pockets. So I'll tell you that story as we go as well. I went 6-7 in the head-to-head, which brings my total record to 63, 44, and 1 draw for a win percentage of 58.8. While Sean went 7-6, just a smidge, right? Just a little nudge right above me. Shout out to Alexander Hernandez for making that work. Shitty judging.
I don't know why you ever went to Kurt Holobaugh.
Hey, now that's bullshit. We could argue he deserved it.
I don't need to argue it. There's no point to ever pick on anyone from Tough ever again. Don't ever do Tough 31. Don't touch them ever. All right? That was a joke of a season. Everyone involved. I don't want to hear about them ever again. So as soon as I see them on the card, I know the UFC's sitting there waiting for that contract to expire for all of them. So I knew that all of them lost, and that's exactly what happened.
Your hatred for Tough is amazing, right? Shout out to you. If there ever was a week to call in sick, it makes sense, right? It adds up, ladies and gentlemen. My guy went 7-6 for a total head-to-head record of 67 wins, 40 losses, and 1 draw for a 62.5% win percentage, back up at that 4-point cushion. I hate you. And now we move on to Dynasty. I went 1-1. Kevin Vallejos, right? Can we say that? Goddamn, looking like a young Ilya Topuria out there. But yeah, Ryan Spann got cooked. Shout out to Waldito. He did his thing. I give you the props, right? When you got the little head-to-head out the way, you did it. I went 1-1, bringing my Dynasty 2025 record to an abysmal 28-25 and 1 draw for a win percentage of 58.8, while Sean went 4-1, bringing his Dynasty total to 40-26 for a win percentage of 60.6%. This guy, I thought I was in a good spot. This guy just finds a way to have winning weeks, right? Shout out to Nergoze. I'm so glad I last minute changed that. And hey, if we would have recorded, who knows, right? Maybe I would have been down even worse. So I in some ways, this all worked out for the best in my favor, despite all the sadness that we have to share. Now, finally, our Dynasty total since the beginning of time. My gosh, Sean is just absolutely taking me to the woodshed and whipping my ass. Last week, my win percentage was 60.95. This week, it is 60.89 for a total 223 wins, 142 losses, 3 draws. Listen to my unlucky streak, and 4 no contests, while Sean sits at 234 wins, 9 wins above me. 11 wins above me. Shout out. 146 losses, 1 draw, and 3 no contests, bringing him to a win percentage of 63.1, up from last week's 61.21. So phenomenal week. Does a lot for my guy in the standings. But guess what, motherfucker? We coming back this week, ladies and gentlemen, so it's only right we break down the card the only way we know how, top to bottom, giving all of the beautiful respect that these athletes deserve, god damn it. Now, I'm excited for this card because, like you said, there's a lot of fun stuff to look forward to. And one of my personal favorite prospects in MMA is competing. His name is Guram Kutateladze, Bald Gang, showing up for the motherfucking Bald Gang. Minus 425, going up against Kaue, whatever the fuck you want to call him, Mr. Fernandes. Plus 330 on the return at lightweight. Now, Sean, I'm going to lead the dance here. You know why? Do you know why, Sean? Because this is my guy. This is my dynasty guy right here. I can confidently say I was above the curve, right? I saw this man's talent before most did, right? And we were aligned on that, right? Suffered a prospect loss as well to Elvis Brenner, one of your favorite underdogs to pick. Shout out, he's done well for your standings. But Guram Kutateladze is a very fun fighter, right? Someone that I really enjoy watching compete. His grappling skills stand out. And training out of that All-Stars team, I think, honestly, there's a lot of young prospects to look forward to from that area. Training out of Sweden, I think that gym just does it right, especially when you have a certain level of athlete, right? You see this from all big gyms, right? Well, you see the ways in which they can get talent, squeeze talent out of the less athletic fighters to make them have respectable careers. But then with the highest level of athletes, you can see what that team really can bring out of that top level fighter. And I think having a guy like Guram at All-Star Training Center, I love to see that. Now listen to this, man. Listen to this. Guram Kutateladze has fought some really impressive fighters in his resume up to this point, right? Notable wins. Mateusz Gamrot, huge win in the UFC. And then Jordan Vucenic, someone we're going to be talking about later on in this card, right? That's one that not a lot of people even know about. Notable wins on that side, notable losses. Now, this is where things get fun for me. Oliver Enkamp. Wow, that's a name that I haven't heard in a long time, but somebody who back in the day, I was very excited about his upper bound limits as well. I was excited to look. I should look into stuff and find out where the fuck he went. How about that? Along that same lines, Damir Ismagulov, one of my favorite prospects in the UFC, who is no longer a part of the UFC because they said, "Hey, we don't got room for talented fighters that somehow go to decision. No, thank you. No, thank you." So even though you beat guys like Guram, guys like I can see his face. He's the poster boy for. He looks just like that guy from Toy Story. What's it? Grant Dawson. There we go. Motherfucking Grant Dawson. It got easy dubs over those two guys, but hey, not UFC level, right? He's not good enough. He's not exciting enough. So I think I say all this to say, even in the wins and losses, he's got some really high-level competition on his resume. On the other side, Kaue Fernandes, training out of Nova União, which I like. He's 1-1 in the UFC. Notable wins being Mr. Mohamed Yahya, which time will tell if that's a notable win as well. But notable losses, Mark Diakese. And I think that matchup really speaks to this matchup well. I think Kaue Fernandes had a really hard time with Mark Diakese's wrestling. And guess what? If you're familiar like I am, ladies and gentlemen, wrestling wasn't his first sport, God damn it. He was out here throwing spinning shit primarily first before he even learned how to grapple enough to take down Kaue Fernandes in that fight. Now, you're looking at Guram, who his biggest skill set is his grappling and wrestling advantage. I like this fight big time for Guram. I think the big key, in my opinion, is staying focused, staying out of danger, and not putting himself in a position to potentially get caught like he did against Elvis Brenner, right? Risk management. Let's get this guy out of there, get a quick submission, and move the fuck on. I'm going with Guram Kutateladze here. Thank you for coming in on short notice and saving this fight. But I feel bad for Kaue because low-key, this kind of a fight was never going to be on his radar if it wasn't for these circumstances with everybody and their mother falling out for the last couple weeks, right? If you remember, this guy was supposed to fight Jared Gordon a couple weeks ago. So there's a lot of things going on in the MMA world, and this time it favors Guram Kutateladze. So who do you got, Sean?
I'm actually agreeing with you on this one. You know what? And for me, I always look at. I talk about this all the time. I always look at the resume and experience. And obviously, yes, he's been in there. He's beaten Gamrot, but I also looked at it as, man, he hasn't fought a lot recently. He's had a lot of canceled fights, missed fights, and a lot of just moving up in time. But I think he's only had 2 MMA fights since that time, or 3, and he's only won 1. So it was like it's hard, to look at that and think, the trajectory is moving forward. But for me, when I look at Guram, I think his aggressive output is what's going to stand out for me. I think it's when you stand out like that, when someone like Fernandes, who I feel is more of a defensive opponent than offensive, I think that can push Guram to be a little bit, like I said, offensive, but hopefully in regards to not being sloppy. I want him to be able to go in there and think that he can go through this guy. But the one issue I have with Guram is I don't think he has that great of defense. I think that's probably my biggest concern with him. I don't think he's got the great defense. I think he can absorb damage rather than avoiding it. And I think that's something where Fernandes can capitalize because he's got really powerful kicks. And I think that makes Fernandes have a little bit more of an advantage when it comes to later in the fight. But for me, I think it comes down to Guram can take him down with the wrestling and use his advantage there. And I think that with his grappling and use of keeping him and holding him and getting control time, I think that's going to be the path to victory in the first round. Because I feel that if it's not a slugfest, but one where Guram's kind of throwing a little too sloppy early, I think that's where Fernandes, if he can avoid, can really start taking the fight to him later in the fight. So to me, I think this one is all about which way is Guram going to take it? Is he going to be, I don't want to say smart because it sounds like a stupid word to use, but is he going to go in this with a game plan, or is he going to seek the opportunity and just kind of go for it and become a little sloppy? So for me, I look at it as on the fly fighting. I say that a couple times throughout our show. It's kind of on the fly fighting on what will happen in that moment. Will he stick to the game plan that the team has been, training with him for 8-something weeks or 5 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, taking out short notice? Or is it one where you kind of have to find it in Fernandes? Do you find that opportunity? And honestly, I think that's what happens. I think he finds the opportunity, and I think he gets a little not lucky, but I think he connects pretty easily. So I have it Guram winning this round 2 knockout.
Wow, look at that. I love that you always give the exact prop, right? Because it means a lot to the show, right? Last week, I didn't even mention this. I didn't have a chance to mention this. I ended up hitting on the biggest bet of my life, right? Turned $20 into $5.90 by hitting
Wow.
on, listen to this, because it goes against one of our picks. I hit on Damone Blackshear by submission. You ready for this? Kevin Vallejos by knockout. And then Roman Dolidze by decision, all on the same ticket. Brought me $5.90 back, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I've never lost my shit like that before watching a decision, right? I kind of
Yes.
checked out after the 4th round because that's how everyone felt. But bro, I didn't even have the volume on. And I'm talking to my girlfriend, and bro, they raised his hand, and bro, the way I lost my mind. And she's like, "What the fuck is going on right now?" Like I didn't tell her nothing. She's like, I feel like fucking Connor. We're rich, baby. That's how I felt right now. So shout out, hit that fucking parlay. I think it's important to drop the methods.
Hell
I'm
yeah.
going Guram by decision, and we'll move on, ladies and gentlemen. So we
Yes, sir.
move to the bantamweight division. Sean has the pleasure of leading the dance on this one. We've got Nathan Fletcher minus 112 going up against one of Sean's favorite fighters that never had the pleasure of gracing his dynasty team, Caolán, Loughran plus 100. Take us to the bantamweight lands, Sean.
Yes, Caolán. Every time I see this guy, I don't know, it brings a smile. It brings a smile to me. I don't know what it is, but In this fight,
I
I'm
think you got a
actually.
thing for Irish dudes. I'm just saying, Reese
I
McKee,
don't. I think so.
motherfucking yeah. What was the other
I
guy
think
too? There was
so.
another guy that you picked on his debut, and he got absolutely smoked. You know who I'm talking about, right?
I
You
know.
know.
I do. I do. Who the fuck was it? Who the fuck was
Shout
it?
out to the Irish, right? They might not
Yes.
be. They may have been one of the best
Now I'm
flash in
curious
the
because I know who it
pans.
is.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about, but you don't know. That's the MMA mind, right?
Because there's a zillion fighters, so it's like it's trying to remember that one time, that one fighter. Um,
I love
in
that you
this
know what
fight,
I'm talking about, though. Like we
yes,
both
I
are
do.
exactly on the same page, but
That's gonna bother me so much because I see him. All right, whatever. It's gonna
it
come to
was
me. I'll try to
170.
mention
I'm
it.
trying to remember too. It's okay. I'll keep doing your thing.
Anyway, so in this one, I actually, as much as I love Caolán, I think this fight is gonna be rather interesting. I think this one's closer than people think. I know. I think the odds are actually a lot closer now than they were like earlier this week. So, um, I think this fight's going to be primarily focused on wrestling and grappling. I think neither of these fighters stand out with their exceptional striking. I think Caolán's pace is going to be the effective part in this fight of landing effective combinations and pushing the pace, but I think it can also lead him later in the fight to being exposed to the takedowns. And I think that's something where Fletcher's going to take serious advantage of. Not one where I think that Caolán is unable to get up from grappling or from a wrestling exchange, but I just see a situation here where Fletcher kind of uses the not possum approach, but it's like kind of letting the other fighter, tire out, but I think Caolán can handle it. I just think it's one where Fletcher's going to do so well on the ground, and I actually like Fletcher's wrestling way more than I do Caolán's, which I was actually starting to believe that Caolán could be like a multi-dimensional fighter, and top tier at almost every level if he continued this pace. I just think in this one. I think Fletcher's going to do really well. Even when he does get taken down, I think he does really well thriving off his back, that I think that no matter which way, I think any way to the ground, I feel like you're almost fighting Fletcher's game. So I feel like it's something where Caolán and his team are going to try to focus on keeping it standing. But like I said, I think that's just going to lead to an opening eventually where Fletcher takes him down and really controls the ground. And I actually see this one where Fletcher wins by submission. And I have it by Fletcher by submission in round two. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's sort of a guillotine or arm triangle sort of situation. I just think he does really well in reverse positions and really securing submissions, especially on someone like Caolán, who has a difficult time trying to get back up when being been taken down in the past. So I think it's one of those where Fletcher kind of seeks the opportunity, waits for it, and then eventually goes his way.
Wow, with the way you started that out, right? I wasn't quite prepared for that pick. I
I
love
try
it.
to
I
do
love
that
it.
on purpose.
Yeah, a little misdirection for the people in the chat. The name we were searching for, Kiefer Crosby. Shout out to Wikipedia for providing that. Because goddamn, yeah, I wouldn't have got it. I wouldn't have got it, but I got it. So shout out to that man for failing at the next level, and for you for being a believer in him. But I'm actually going with Caolán Loughran here. Now, what I found very fun about researching for this fight is two things. One, Nathan Fletcher lost on one of your favorite things in the world, Tough 32, right? So this is great to analyze when it comes to the things that Sean loves and hates. And then the second thing that I found very interesting is that this is a rematch, ladies and gentlemen. Now everyone says, hold on, hold on, hold on. Why didn't you put the number 2 there? Yeah, because it happened in amateur MMA, ladies and gentlemen. Both of these guys on the European, Anglo-Saxon, British scene doing their thing and fighting other white dudes on the come up. This is the second time they get to meet each other in the cage. Now, I think that experience will serve, if anyone, both of them very differently, right? Nathan Fletcher going out there and thinking, hey, I already beat this guy, right? This is a different, you look at the fight a little bit differently in that way. But Caolán, on the other hand, yeah, I lost, but I've felt what your game is like, right? I think that does a lot for fighters in rematches. Now, when looking at how I thought this fight was going to play out, I agreed with the first part of what you were saying. I think Loughran, it's weird because honestly, and I say this as respectfully as I can, there's nothing really about his game that necessarily stands out. Like I feel like he's very much so a all rounder in MMA. He's not going to be pushing offensive grappling on you, but he's going to be trying to put you in a position where he can win, even if that happens in the clinch, even if that happens with some surprising top control. But he's not necessarily going out there trying to take you down, right? But when he gets in those positions, he knows what to do with them, right? So I think if he's going to win this fight, it's going to be about pace and pressure, like you said. I think ultimately, though, he's fought better takedown artists than Nathan Fletcher and hasn't gotten submitted just yet. So I think the more this fight goes on, in my opinion, the less fresh Nathan Fletcher becomes and the easier those takedown defense moments become for Caolán. I think he's going to end up winning this one by decision. I think this fight is going to be kind of boring. Like I think no matter which way it plays out, it's going to be a little boring. I think if Nathan Fletcher wins, I agree. I hope he does get a submission because that will change the way I see the fight going. But every time I look at this fight in my mind's eye, all I see is either Nathan Fletcher humping a leg or Caolán doing his quasi range output striking style to win a boring decision. So no matter which way I look at this, I think ultimately the fighters that's going to win, and this sounds very simple, is the one who's going to be able to push their side of the game a little bit further, right? Push their advantage. And I think Caolán has a little bit of a slicker striking style than Nathan Fletcher, and he should be able to make that work. So give me the underdog. Next up, we move on to a fight that, goddamn it, might as well not even be happening, Sean. Let's be real. This should have been the curtain jerker right here. We got Shauna Bannon minus 165, Ireland's last hope in the women's divisions, going up against Puja Tomar, the leader of the Indian wave of MMA, right? Some thought it was going to be on show Jubilee. I thought it was too. But no, it's Puja Tomar plus 150, Sean. Listen, I'm trying to get hype about this. There's nothing to be hype about this. As far as digging into these two fighters and digging into the records, right? I love that Shauna Bannon is fighting out of Loughran martial arts. Her most notable fight was losing 2-1 Dakota Dacheva in the amateur scene, which I thought was pretty interesting. And then obviously she took that L to Bruna Brazil as well. On the other side of things, Puja Tomar, obviously her most notable win is against B Win, right? Shout out to One Championship. Killer B's just, let's just be real, bro. She got it all, bro. Google her. I'm just saying, she got it all. But that's a funny situation too, because they ended up fighting in Muay Thai. Puja lost, and they fought in MMA and B won. I mean, and beat one and beat B. You know what I'm trying to say. Most notable loss coming to Stamp Fairtex. I think of these two fighters, Puja has been in the more high stress, fully championship material moments compared to Shauna Bannon. I'm going with the underdog here, man. Fuck it. I'm going with Puja Tomar. I think Shauna Bannon is going to be the crispier, rangier striker. But I think ultimately in women's MMA, sometimes that shit just doesn't matter, right? If we could go out there and we could push our advantages, we could get you against the cage, make it a little dirty, make it a little boring. I think Puja Tomar is going to end up edging out a very close decision. I think on the feet, too, she could give her some problems, especially with her leg kicks. I think Shauna Bannon, although she has the attributes of length for this weight class, I don't think she's the best at using them to stay on the outside, and ends up in a lot of clinch positions where I think the downfall begins. Now, I'm hoping to see some very strategical improvements for Shauna Bannon. I think if I saw a smarter fighter out there on the tape, I'd be a lot more confident in picking her. That's why I'm not picking her here. And if I'm being honest, there's a lot of times where I look at the odds, right? And I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. This doesn't make sense to me. I think if you look at the way both of these ladies fight, there's one of them that clearly is working towards something. God damn it. And give me Puja Tomar because of that.
Yeah, for me, I'm actually going with Bannon, but it's a lot of it had to do with uh, being very indecisive about this because I think Bannon is super, super sloppy, and it's clearly criticized on that. I know she's a kickboxing champion or whatever, but I think it's one where Tomar is very aggressive and uses a lot of power in her hands. But I think it's Bannon's variety of attacks that make it very difficult for Tomar to even get close. I think she's going to have a really difficult time trying to land cleanly on someone like Bannon, where Bannon's a black belt in BJJ. I think she has a much more, she has a much better advantage because of her variety, but I also think she has a significant advantage when it comes to the ground. So if it does make its way to the ground, I think it's almost a one-sided fight from there. But I do think this fight finds its way to stand for, I would say, 80% of this fight. I think it's going to be standing. But I think it's because it's going to be Tomar that's going to be trying to engage so aggressively, trying to find something that I think it's just going to be one where Bannon just kind of pieces her apart, little by little, nothing too significant. This one's going to fly right through, and I think Bannon wins by unanimous decision. But I do have it in my notes here that I could absolutely see a situation. I literally wrote, if I want to bet, put Tomar winning by KO. That's how I have it because I think there is a situation where Tomar could just land one clean, and we're talking about Bannon, taking a nice nap for a couple hours after that because that's definitely a situation that could easily happen with how sloppy Bannon is defensively and offensively. So I think it's more of a variety that beats Tomar, but I can absolutely see a situation where Tomar lands a clean one.
You love it. I love that we got two opposite fights early and often, but we move on to the motherfucking what weight class is this? Because I think it's middleweight. Yes, the middleweight division, ladies and gentlemen. We have now. This is fascinating to me because this is the second dynasty fighter of the night, and both of them so far has been for Team Chris, and both of them have been bald, ladies and gentlemen. Bald gang to the day I die. We got Christian Leroy Duncan minus 549 going up against Andrey Pulyaev. Shout out to that. I fucked that up. It sounded like an EIEIO there for a second, but plus 480 on the comeback in his UFC debut. One of two debuting fighters on this card speaks to the strength, right? Usually we are about 4 or 5. So Sean, who you got and why?
For me, I think this is CLD all day. Honestly, I think this is one where superior boxing and just crisp striking are what's going to dominate this fight. I think, you know, I don't even fucking Andre. I'm calling him. Fuck it. I'm not calling his last name. I don't give a fuck. All right. So I think he has the height and the reach, but I think he's super sloppy, and I think he's got one of the worst counter striking and counter wrestling I've ever seen in the UFC level. So I think this is one where CLD can easily take advantage and with the upper hand on the feet and easily. And if it does take it to the wrestling, I really don't see it as a situation where I'm too concerned. I don't think Duncan's a wrestler or even a high level one at that, but I do think he has the ability to show and mix in some takedowns, change the levels a little bit. So for me, I think it's going to be one where Andre tries to grapple a little bit, but I don't think he has the skills to be, an all-time grappler for someone like CLD. So I think this one is just CLD all day. I think he's just a name the UFC is hoping so badly breaks through because he could still be something. And I think this is one where if I'm a betting man, because I'm not, because I lose every time, I would bet CLD to win by knockout. So that's why I have it. I think CLD by late first round, if not early second round knockout.
Man, this is music to my heart because when I first started taping this fight, I was like, man, why would they give CLD this matchup? And I was like, man, with a name like Pulyaev, shit, I hope this is a donk right here because if not, I'm in trouble, right? And then I started looking at the tape and I was like, oh yeah, I see why they gave him this fight. I think this is a get right fight for him, like you said, coming off of a stretch where he lost two very significant fights, right, to Armin Petrosian and then RoboCop Gregory Rodriguez. I agree with you though. I think honestly, looking back, especially at that Rodriguez fight, I'm just disappointed in that performance, and I'm sure CLD feels the same way, just because I think skill for skill, he's still better than that guy. I think he went out there and kind of fell into the brawl and let it happen, and then the chips fell where they may. But skill for skill, I think he still really hasn't shown his best in the UFC, and that's a scary prospect when you consider that. I think ultimately is really going to come down to putting yourself in the position best to perform on the night. I think something that really speaks to his skill level, although Will Curry has never made it to the UFC, he's fought on a Contender Series, trying to get in, lost to, I believe, Jordan Santos from a couple weeks ago, or last week, right? Was that last week? Anyway, he lost to him on the Contender Series, but they fought twice in Cage Warriors, CLD and Will Curry. And man, those fights, in my opinion, really showed that Christian Leroy Duncan was clearly a level above everyone in Cage Warriors, but most importantly, can adapt in rematches even, and look even more good than he did last time. And I think for this fight, like you said, this should be the coming out party for CLD. It should be a matchup made in heaven for him to showcase his skills, specifically on the feet. I think he's going to land a spinning elbow at some point in this fight. I think that's something that's been speaking to me. So how about that? I don't know if it's going to be the actual knockout blow, but give me over 0.5 spinning elbows landed. How about that? I think Andrey Pulyaev to say something. Shout out to Shlemenko's School of Martial Arts, right? Shout out to Alexander Shlemenko. I think you could see that he trains with that guy, right? Because with all due respect, it works for you, Shlemenko. But God damn it, it ain't going to work for everybody, right? Not everybody's a physical tank in the way that you are. So I think, just like you said, a little raw on the edges, still a lot of room for improvement with the raw physicality he has. But there's a certain snap to fighters that have his length that unfortunately I really haven't seen in his game, right? Some names to put in that same vein, right? Like a guy like Jamal Hill. There's a certain snap to his game that he's using that length to his right power to try to land that shot at the perfect extension of his length, right? Pulyaev is long as hell and just out there. You know what I'm saying? We throwing it out there. So, like I said, I think this is tailor-made for CLD. Give me CLD all motherfucking day. Next up, we move on to the division of motherfucking kings, the heavyweight division, and we got our first ranked fighters on the card. We got the number 8th ranked Marcin Tybura plus 106 going up against the 13th ranked Mick Parkin minus 120 on the comeback. All right. Mick Parkin is my dynasty guy, right? I was off the train. I'm back on the train. I still believe to this day, right? To this day, that there is a lot that needs to be proven about Mick Parkin's MMA game, but goddamn it, he's undefeated, and that's not an easy thing to do. I like his team Fish Tank. I think there's a lot of fighters that are yet to be heard from this team that we're going to make some noise. But I think if anything jumped off the page for me in this one is just the disparity in big time fights that these guys have, right? Shout out to Marcin Tybura. Let me just rattle this off for you, just so you could get an idea, a perspective, right? Mick Parkin's undefeated in MMA. Let's listen to some of the guys that Marcin Tybura has lost to. Shout out Tim Johnson, Fabricio Verdum, Derek Lewis, Shamil Abdul-Rahimov, Augusto Sakai, Alexander Volkov, Tom Aspinall, and Sergey Spivak, right? These are all very respectable names and all fighters that are higher level than any of Mick Parkin's wins, right? And these are all people that have had the pleasure of beating him. Now, if I rattled off the list of fighters that Marcin Tybura has beat, we'll be here all day because this motherfucker's got a very impressive resume at heavyweight. I think he is a very good bordering, distinguishing line in this division. That's, hey, if you could beat this guy, not only are you good enough to be an actual heavyweight, but you also have proven that you are a thinking man's fighter, right? And I think that's the key in this matchup. I think although Marcin Tybura has the experience and has the grappling edge, I'm confident in Mick Parkin being able to keep this fight where it serves him on the feet and not end up in a stupid situation where he gets taken down by Marcin Tybura. I think Marcin Tybura's takedowns aren't very good, if we're being honest. I remember being impressed by his Tai Tuivasa win. And then looking back at that in retrospect and being like, oh, this is just Tuivasa is just so bad, right? Shout out. I love me some Shuivasa, but goddamn. So this division is tough, right? And with that, I think Mick Parkin's going to be a big riser in this division. I think ultimately this one ends in a knockout, right? I think the range, let's finally go out there and fucking put it to the test. And I think the fear, right? The fear of what Marcin Tybura can do back to him in this scenario is going to bring the best out of Mick Parkin. Give me Mick Parkin by KO, round 2.
Wow. To be honest with you, I'm taking Mick Parkin. I have to believe in Mick Parkin or I don't. You know, I feel like the last what was it, the last fight he had, or maybe the fight before, where I was like the biggest hater on him. And you know what? I feel like if there's a time to believe in Mick, it has to be right now. And to me, there's no shot in any hell I will ever pick Tybura in a fight ever. I don't care if he wins 10 in a row. I don't care. I'll never pick him. Because to me, he is a certified, what's the word? Gatekeeper of the ranked division, if that makes any sense. He will always be ranked, but somehow, like, he'll lose 3 in a row, but he'll win, like, 1 against, like, a top 15. And you'll be like, all right, yeah, he's still around. Because that's who Tybura is. Like, if they give Tybura is who they gave Aspinall when he came on his first fight back. You know, like, let me, like, if I have to explain that further, I think it's difficult for someone like you. Like, they want you to lose. Tom Aspinall, big name. They want you to get your ass kicked. They gave him Tai Tuivasa, hoping Tai, big name, fun guy in the UFC. Fans love him. Tai, get in there, whoop his ass. All of a sudden, he beats Tai, and they're like, fuck. All right, well, we'll keep him at top 7. He's like we can keep him something decent. All right, Spivak, beat his ass. All right, good job, Spivak. Get out there. All right, let's give him Diaz or whatever the fuck so that he can keep his ranking. All right, he keeps his ranking. All right, cool. All right, Mick, get in there. That's what it is. It's like one fight, they want him to get his ass beat. Next one, they're like, all right, keep that ranking. Go in there. This is the one where it's time for Mick to get that top 10 rank. And I think this is one where they're trying to really back Mick Parkin here. You know, he's still a very, I wouldn't say very, in semi-exciting prospect to see hopefully turns into something. And I think that's one where Tybura could be the perfect name for that. So for me, I think it's the fact that Parkin trains with Aspinall. He has probably been there in the corner for Aspinall or in the crowd for when that fight happened. He probably has done double the training for this fight against Tybura. I feel like that's always a significant advantage whenever people from the same camp fight the same guy. You know, you almost like keeping the same coaches to talk about the same game plan and prepare, especially when that person's fought him. You know, like obviously we know about Aljamain and Marab versus Jan. You know, it's like one of those situations where you're almost just so ready for it because you've seen it multiple times. So for me, I think this one is a super slow one. Grappling. I'm not really too big on this being a striking exchange at all. I think if it's going to be a striking exchange, it's going to come Tybura's way. And I really don't even see that being a possibility. I think this is super slow. I think Parkin's super slow. I think he's stepping up in competition and will do just enough to win this fight. But to me, I absolutely believe that this is where Parkin wins and it ends here. Like I like this may be a super like hater thing to say, but I believe that if Mick Parkin were to face Tai Tuivasa now, and Ty's probably not even ranked. I don't even know what he is. I would
He
pick Ty
weighs
to
like
win.
400 pounds right now. Shout out to
Yeah.
Tai
Hey,
Tuivasa. I love
good
it.
for him. He can weigh in right now at 450 and probably still win. That's just how much I believe they of Mick Parkin, but I think he is probably always going to be top 8 at the most type of guy. So this is one of those like, all right, cool, climb the rank, but do you really believe in Mick Parkin? And that's the question I want to ask you before you move on, before you all move on. I'm picking Mick Parkin to win by unanimous decision, But quickly, in 3 sentences, do you really believe Mick Parkin is a top 5 guy who could eventually fight for a title? Obviously, we know the situation in Aspinall and all that. But besides him, pretend he didn't exist, can he be a real contender?
I think today, right now, I don't think he is, but I think he needs to really develop into his potential as an athlete. I think thinking back at the highest levels of fighters in the heavyweight division, there's just a difference in their athletic ceiling. And I think although Mick Parkin is that kind of an athlete, I don't think his game really benefits in showing that. So that's what I mean. I think if he can develop on his power game specifically and stop making these fights a very prolonged, similar situation, right? If he could take the fight by the scruff of the neck a little bit more, I think he's going to take a lot of these guys out. I really believe that. I think he's technically and strategically a step ahead. But in this division specifically, those things can be alluring, but they also can just get X'd out by physical potential. I'm going to crack you with this fucking hammer right here, this fucking hammer, and it's over. So that's the way I feel about Mick Parkin. I think he has top 5 potential, no doubt. It's just really going to be about how he can grow into his body, so to speak, for this division. That's the real key, and I've really enjoyed, which is why I picked him back up, seeing that change in his game, because what I saw in his UFC debut is a completely different fighter than now, and that's a great indicator of what can come in the future.
If it lets me on mute, thank you. No, I see. That's something I believe in too. I think at this moment I can't believe in Mick, like totally. I want to believe. I really do. It's just
like if this was Jelton Almeida, we'll be picking Almeida all day.
Absolutely, all day.
Yeah.
I just think he's just not athletic. He doesn't have that athleticism as like someone like Aspinall, where he's athletic from. If he were to lose 25 pounds, he probably could be a light heavyweight.
He doesn't have to tell you he's athletic, right?
No, that's what I'm saying. He proves it. And I think if you really want to be at that level, not to say that, he's going to ever fight Aspinall, which he won't, but there's levels. And I think even from a physical standpoint, there's definitely levels to it. And I love the fact that he trains with Aspinall. That's, there's nothing better than to train with the best of the best. But I think it's just one where this one's about history here, where Aspinall knew exactly how to beat Tybura in a minute. That whole coaching team knows what to do, and I think they'll have a perfect execution game plan for it to be done.
I love that. I love that we spoke on this fight this much, right? Because I didn't expect that, ladies and gentlemen. But we move on to the flyweight division, the real division of kings, right? I love when we see a card do what I always think is the best thing to do, right? If we're going to have a fucking heavyweight fight in the middle of this, put it right back, right? Let's go right back to the next fight. These motherfuckers are going to look so fast compared to the heavyweights that came before them, especially when Tybura's on the bill. But we've got 2 dynasty fighters that both belong to my guy, Sean Negron. We have Loner Kavanagh going up against Felipe dos Santos, and it's only fair and only right that you get to lead the dance and break down this fight for us. So how do you feel about your sons?
Is it me, or did Loner lose? No, he didn't lose. He won, right? His last fight with me?
Yeah, he won.
Yeah.
He won his debut. Yep.
I don't know why I think, why do I have, a bad feeling with him? I don't know what it is, but this one, I think this is where, for me, I look at Kavanagh's boxing. Because it's not one where I think he's just going to be crazy. I think this is one where he's super calm, super patient, methodical, precise, making it very tough for someone like Dos Santos to really get comfortable. I think Dos Santos is going to do great to try to push.
I'm sorry to interrupt the show. This is terrible news. You just mentioned this about boxing, so I need to jump in here and say rest in peace to the legend George Foreman, who we have just found out at 72 years of age has passed away. I'm so sorry. I never really do this, Sean, right? Because this is not a live show. But goddamn, this hurt me, right? I picked up the phone and my heart broke. So I'm sorry, Loner Kavanagh, no disrespect to your boxing game, but rest in peace to the motherfucking champ, George Foreman. I'm sorry. Continue, Sean.
No, I did not know that. I just had to check Twitter myself to confirm that. That's crazy. That's actually kind of crazy. Wow. Well, rest in peace. Obviously, yes. Wow, that is so weird because I was just talking about George Foreman. I was it yesterday or 2 nights ago. I was on a debate about boxing like 2 days ago and bringing up all the legends. That is so funny. But rest in peace. Yes, I can't believe I'm comparing it to Leonard Kavanaugh in this situation. But
Sorry, I threw you off big time.
no,
Sorry.
no, that's crazy. That is crazy that's just happened. But it's one of those where yes, to keep it back to MMA. It's gonna be very patient, methodical, precise. Like I was saying, that's what I have in my notes. I think it's one where Dos Santos is going to do everything possible to be very aggressive to disrupt the rhythm. I think that's one where I think Kavanaugh does a really good job making sure that he's fighting his fight and you're going to fight his fight with it. I think he's been able to control the octagon the entire time. Where I felt like for Kavanaugh, even in times where he's on the back foot, I still think you're still trying to reach him. And I think that's something where he's done a really good job at making sure that he's in control of the entire fight. Even in fights where there have been fights that I've seen him that I didn't even think he won. That I thought, you know what, he was still fighting Kavanaugh's fight here. So I think that's just one where even though competition gets higher and higher, I still think in this situation, this is Kavanaugh's fight to lose. I think this is one where Kavanaugh pushes the pace. I think Dos Santos is going to get really annoyed with how trying to rush in, trying to find openings, and it's just not going to be there because you're going to see someone like Kavanaugh who, as a fighter, I mean, as a fan, you might not like his fight style because he might be a little slower than usual for you to start. But I think it's one where he is just going to exploit the holes in Dos Santos' paws, and especially in the grappling game and the defense of Dos Santos. I don't think Dos Santos has that great of grappling defense or even stand-up defense in general. So I think that's one where Kavanaugh will find his place, find his shots, pick him apart, and will slowly break him down. I have it by Kavanaugh round 2 knockout, but I don't think it's one where you're talking about a guy, eyes rolling back. It's bad. I think this is one where it's just, hits him either with a body shot or a nice shot where he goes down and just, the refs just kind of like had enough of it, jumps in and ends this fight. So I'm going Kavanaugh by knockout. Rest in peace to George Foreman.
Yes, sir. Shout out to Conor Lavanaugh. That's what I'm gonna call him to the end of time.
He
Shout
heard
out.
me say that.
But I gotta say, man, I agree with a lot of what you had to say on this one, man. I really like this matchup though because I think, regardless of both of these guys being very young in their careers, I think they're both really fucking well schooled fighters, which is hard to come by in the UFC in 2025 for fighters without much experience, right? Now let's look at the Felipe dos Santos side, right? He has losses over two very prominent guys in this division, right? One that just had a huge week in Andrey Lima, and the other in Manel Cape, who had a huge win over Asu Amabayev earlier this month. Man, there's a lot to look at in those fights, but I think this is my takeaway on Felipe dos Santos. And if I'm crazy, I'm crazy, right? But I think this guy is huge for this weight class, and I think he might benefit from strangely enough, from moving up. I think there's a lot of times where I'm watching his fights where it almost is like he sees everything, right? Like there's nothing that his opponents can do that necessarily shocks or surprises him. But his issue really is he kind of allows the fight to come to him, right? Like no matter what phase it is, I think if he could put himself in a position where he's maybe a little bit more hydrated, right? Maybe a little bit more able to push a fight of his own, not just following whatever's being dictated for him. I think that's what's going to be the difference in his career because I like his prospects as a fighter, but I don't like the way he just sort of sits back and allows the fight to develop because a lot of the times he ends up feeling like he's right there, right? But in reality, he's probably like right here. And that's a problem against the top level guys, right? Against somebody like Leonard Kavanaugh, you might be able to still get the win, right? But against those top level opponents, it's going to be harder if you're not dictating your own game. Now, as far as this matchup, I'm going Leonard Kavanaugh by decision. I think this is another one of those fights where we're looking at both of these guys and we're like, how the hell do any of these guys make the weight class? I think both of these guys are huge for flyweight. But I agree with you. I think Loner Kavanagh has something a little special to his hands, man. There's a real fluidity of movement there and also creativity, right? Finding different targets and exploiting those targets to the body, especially. I think Felipe dos Santos is game as fuck, and that's why I'm picking this fight decision because I think no matter what, like no matter what phase of the fight, he's willing to contest with you there. Like no matter what happens, you're not gonna spark this guy out or make him quit on coming up with new ideas. Like no matter what, he's gonna be in it and trying to take your head off. So I love that for both of these guys. I think this is a big test for both of these guys. But ultimately, unfortunately, I think Loner Kavanagh should have his number. Felipe dos Santos, good luck to you in your career, my mans, because I think there's a lot to be said about career management. And maybe if he got a couple fights a certain kind of way instead of hopping into the UFC on short notice, maybe this fight would be a fight where he's in a position where he's the favorite and he is looking to develop on his growing skills versus being that person for somebody else. But Loner Kavanagh is great. Felipe dos Santos is great. This is one of the fights on this card that I think is very, very well matched despite the odds. So I love this fight, man. It's going to be a dog fight. Give me Loner Kavanagh. Next up, we move on to the lightweight division, baby. Jai Herbert, minus 110, going up against my guy, Chris Padilla. No longer the bald gang, but still the Chris gang, ladies and gentlemen. I love that I get to lead the dance on this one because, God damn it, I don't know how this fucking fight is going to go. Like, no, the more I try to think about it, the less clear it becomes. I think Jai Herbert has all the physical attributes, speed, and power to finish anybody in this weight class. I mean, we saw him head kick Ilia Topuria and almost put him on skates right before getting absolutely sent to the land of wind and ghosts. I love Jai Herbert's game because he will shock you with his speed. He will damage you to the body specifically. Like a lot of the kicks he lands reminds me of Uriah Faber talking about getting hit by Aldo, right? Like he has that kind of a snap in his kicks, especially at range. Chris Padilla is an enigma inside of an anomaly, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how to read this guy, man. I have him on my dynasty team. He's been excitingly surprising each time along the way. I think obviously getting wins against lower level opponents like James Lomtop and help me out here. What's the other guy? Wrong Zoo. Yeah, you got the wrong Jew. Shout out to John Anik. I love that. You ever saw that clip?
Yes.
John Anik is the fucking man, man. Shout out.
Yes, he is.
As far as looking at this fight, it's weird because I want to say this is a pretty clear decision for Jai Herbert. He's going to go out there and keep him at range, keep him disciplined, and find his way to a decision. But with Chris Padilla, man, I don't know how to read his game. I don't think he's a particularly strong grappler. I don't think he's a particularly strong striker, but he's a motherfucking dog when it comes to putting the pieces together for MMA. I think Chris Padilla is going to find Jai Herbert's chin at some point in this fight, and I think it's going to make it interesting. I think this is going to be a super close fight, man. I think Jai Herbert's key to victory here is staying disciplined, staying on the outside like he did early on against a lot of the fighters he's fought. But later on in the rounds is when things get more interesting to me, especially if Chris Padilla can add in takedowns and change the direction of this fight, right? The longer it continues to snowball at range, the further away from a win Chris Padilla comes. I think Jai Herbert should be a favorite in this matchup, which makes the close odds a little tough. But I'm feeling it, baby. Give me Chris Padilla. Continue to show us what the hell you're going to be in the UFC because I don't have any clue, but I know I'm here for it because this motherfucker is violence, and when you give him an inch, he takes a mile. So give me Chris Padilla.
Yeah, that's what made this one tough for me at first because it's hard because I think Chris Padilla is aggressive, sloppy, but violent. While I think Herbert is more of a clean, well-timed, technical fighter. So it's almost like opposite strikers. But the thing for me is that Padilla hasn't really faced that high-level opponents we just talked about. So it's like it looks nice and it feels comfortable to pick him because of what he has faced. But that's the part where I feel, to me, Jai is a way different level than James, on top and fucking Rongju. Like, I think we're on totally different wavelengths now. So it's tough. It's tough. I wanted to pick Padilla. I really did, because I love aggressive fucking raw type of fighter. Like, I'm coming to kill you. I'm going to win this fight. And I love that. It's like underdog mentality of I will not lose. I will not fail. For me, I think Jai, like you said, I think Jai has all the tools to win this fight. I think he's still something. For me, what bothered me, honestly, about picking this fight too, was Jai Herbert's last fight against, well, not last fight, but against Zaim. That to me really bothered me, because I really thought, losing to Ilya now, looking back at it, he clipped him and then he gets clipped to the shadow realm. But for me, it's
Most
one
people get knocked out by that head kick, though. Like, let's
hundred
be
percent,
honest. He was
100%.
out. Like, he was
Yeah,
out and came back.
100%,
So, needs to be
100%.
stated. Yeah.
And that's why I was all in on the Herbert fucking roller coaster there. I really did believe that he could have turned into something, but that Zaim fight almost completely turned me in the opposite direction. I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. Like, every time I begin to believe, I feel like I'm getting the shit end of the stick. So for me, I'm gonna put my eggs in this basket one final time. I'm picking Herbert to win, because I think it has to do with the fighting style. I think eventually Herbert's grappling, which has, I think, improved a lot over these last couple fights, I think that could help the situation. But I do think that this one is going to be mainly a very, very primarily, I should say, striking bout. So I think this one, the later it goes, the more it's in Herbert's hands, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think Herbert can avoid and deny all of Padilla's heavy, flow and coming after him. And for me, I think Herbert wins this one by decision. I think it's a great fight. Honestly, potential to be fight of the night or even performance of the night for one of them. So this is going to be a great fight. I can't wait for this one.
Great shouts all around. Styles make fights, and that's going to be a goddamn fight. We move on to the lightweight division. We're staying in the lightweight division, I should say. We got Jordan the Epidemic Vucenic minus 400 going up against Chris Duncan plus 330. Whew, this is a motherfucking fight right here, despite the odds, Sean. So why don't you lead the dance? Why don't you let the people know? This is a fresh slate, right? I honestly searched up these guys twice because I was like, really? We haven't drafted these guys yet. But yeah, both of these guys open to the public, right? People that maybe Sean's looking at with his first pick, right? Who knows? So let us know how you feeling about these lightweights.
I'm a big fan of Jordan. I really am. I think this one, honestly, as not to say that I'm a fan of Chris Duncan. I just do believe that um, I feel like people look at Chris Duncan differently than maybe I do. I don't know. I'm one where I'm a big believer in Chris Duncan still, but I just don't think in this one. I think this one's going to be super, super grappling and wrestling. I honestly don't even see this one escaping the first 2 minutes. I think Jordan is just a fucking swarm. He's a fucking nightmare for someone like Chris Duncan, and I think he's just going to not ragdoll in a way like he's going to get a literal ragdoll, but it's just one of those where I think he just absolutely controls this fight. It looks like an older brother versing a little brother in just total dominance. I think this one gets to the takedown, and you're going to see a bunch of submission attempts, guillotine, arm triangle, something will eventually land. I think Chris Duncan's in for a hell of a fucking nightmare. And for me, I think this is all about inside the distance for me. And I think this one ends within 2 to 3 minutes of the first round via submission. I'm going Jordan all day.
Wow, I fucking love it because I've got Vucenic starred on my paper as well, man. I'm a big fan of his game, and obviously it's weird because this guy has fought the best competition of the two and has mixed results, right? Split with Paul Hughes and Cage Warrior, so went 1-1, and then also got a win over Morgan Charriere, but also obviously lost his UFC debut to Guram Kutateladze. So looking to wipe that taste out of his mouth. And then Chris Duncan's absolutely been on fire, right? Since having that setback against Manuel Torres, got a really big comeback against Yano Ashmuz, and then finally getting that guillotine against Balaji Oki. I think both of those wins were great developing wins for Chris Duncan, showing his potential, especially working with those guys at ATT. But there's a big difference in those names between the names that Jordan Vucenic has fought in his career, despite them not being at the highest level, besides his last fight with Guram, which was a fantastic fight. Some of the best action you could see at lightweight. So I agree with you, man. I'm going with Jordan Vucenic in this one. I think ultimately, though, this fight is very scary. Like, I think Chris Duncan can both hurt Vucenic on the feet and find his way to a submission. Like, I think there's a lot of different areas of danger in this fight for Jordan. So I'm interested to see how he plays it, right? Like, is he going to look to try to, like you said, enforce his grappling early, or is he going to play it out on the feet and see where they lie as far as their skills in that area? Because I think if there is anywhere that they have a clear, distinct advantage, I would say it's Jordan Vucenic's power, as well as his ability to find positions of top control versus Chris Duncan's flash in a pan finishing skills. Like, I think there's going to be, regardless of whoever wins, I think there's going to be more moments where Jordan is controlling this fight than there is that Chris Duncan is necessarily winning it outright. But I think Chris Duncan will have his moments where he shows, right, that he belongs at this level, and this isn't an overwhelming matchup for him. But I think this is Jordan Vucenic's moment to shine. I think he's going to really show who he is and where he belongs in the UFC. So give me Jordan Vucenic. We skipped the fight, but it's okay. We'll do it out of order, ladies and gentlemen. This one comes beforehand, but it's okay. We're breaking it down afterwards. We got
I knew I was. I'm like, wait a
Nathaniel
minute.
Wood. Yeah, I fucked that up big time. And then I almost was like, hey, go back. And then I was like, nah, forget it. So we got Nathaniel Wood plus 124 going up against Morgan Charriere minus 135. We got a dynasty head-to-head, ladies and gentlemen. We got Sean representing Nathaniel Wood, me representing the last pirate, Morgan Charriere. Now, I had the pleasure of going second in that last fight, right? So why don't I just make it happen here and go first? Am I saying that correctly? I'm not making things up, right, Sean?
Do you want me to go first? I can go first. So we want...
I wanted to go first, God damn it! But okay.
All right, so I'll just go from here. All right, so I think this is a very fun fight. This is honestly, I think, number 3 or number 2 that I have as one I'm really much looking forward to. Obviously, dynasty implications are big here, especially with our growing rivalry that we have in competition. So this is like an automatic 1 point for somebody. Or really, it's like automatic 2 points for somebody if you look at it, a loss to you and a win to me, or vice versa. But for me, I think I'm picking Wood to win this one. Maybe it's because of the blinders I have for him, but I do think he's just a very skilled and aggressive striker here. I think Charriere has a very unorthodox style, power, and that could pose as a serious threat, and I can understand why he's the favorite. I think if he catches Wood with one significant shot, I think it'll be one where it could be the end of Wood very, very quickly. So I think Wood needs to maintain his distance and just focus on abusing the leg kicks. I know that was a pause statement. It was very close. But it was just, I think it's one where you have to just abuse the leg kicks. Almost like Pereira should have done in his title fight, like he did in the first round, but then completely avoided from 2 through 5 and just in this title fight. I think Wood has to control the leg kicks, control the fight, kill any sort of serious momentum and forward progress that someone like Morgan is going to push. I think bringing Wood's most main vulnerability in the takedown, taking it out of the game, or forcing it to be a more of a desperation attempt more than situational. I think it's one, if you abuse the leg, you almost know that Morgan's going to shoot for a takedown eventually, and I think that is where Nathaniel Wood seriously struggles. And then when that starts to happen, you can prepare for the takedown attempt and really be prepared to stiff it, stuff it, whatever you want to fucking call it. And I know, you see, it's pause all day, 2025. And so it's one of those where I think, honestly, it's up to Wood to control this fight. If he goes out there and slows down Charriere and makes it to the point where Charriere is getting desperate, it's his fight. If Nathaniel Wood gets in too close and gets popped just once early on, I think that's going to make Nathaniel all fucked up. I think he's going to get too timid. He's going to get too nervous about it happening again. What's the word? Fucking jab heavy to the point of where you're jumping on all the feints. You're so reactionary, and I think that's just going to lead to a really, really bad time for someone like Nathaniel Wood going 15 minutes. So I have to believe in Wood here because he's in Dynasty. I still think it's a close fight where he could definitely get it done as long as he controls it. So I'm picking Wood by decision, but I can absolutely see a situation where Charriere clips him and turns it into his fight, and it gets over very quickly.
Yeah, I'll keep this one short and sweet. I don't like that Morgan Charrier's fights are always so fucking close. But I think there's a lot to learn in fights like that. And I think this is going to be another one of those fights. I think it's really going to come down to those specific moments and who's able to edge out those different moments. And I could definitely see Nathaniel Wood's path to victory, especially like you said, building off those leg kicks. But I'm ultimately going to be going with Morgan Charriere just because I think his grappling advantage is significant. And I think against bigger, more athletic fighters, Nathaniel Wood has always struggled. And especially that fight against Muhammad Naimov really opened up my eyes, right? Regardless of how much we respect Naimov and where he comes from. I think that was a little bit of a shock to me, at least, as far as skill wise, how that fight went, despite how close it was, right? So I think ultimately Morgan Charriere is going to be a little bit stronger in those phases, and I think it's going to make the difference to edge out this fight. But it's a close one. I'm not too sure, and it makes sense the odds are where they are because it's a close fight. But we move on to the women's divisions, ladies and gentlemen. The women MMA, the second of the women's MMA fights we have, and both are at 115. We've got Molly McCann plus 205 going up against Alexia Thainara minus 215. The only other debuting fighter on this entire card is Mrs. Thainara, hot off of a win in the Contender Series, looking to upset the hometown favorite in Molly McCann. Now, Sean, you went first last time, so it's only right I take the helm on the fight that I'm sure you're most eager to discuss. I will keep this one short and sweet. I went back and forth on this one. I don't know why the odds are where they are with Alexia Thainara being such a huge favorite. I think although she has shown to be a good grappler positionally, I don't think she is the kind of grappler that has given Molly McCann issues in the past. If anything, a lot of the submissions on Thainara's record are situational, right? She found herself in a spot, she gave up a takedown, and then she landed an armbar, right? It's a lot of very different situational submissions versus I'm going to take you down and I'm going to put you in a spot to submit you. And I think that's where Molly McCann struggles. I think for Molly McCann, it's going to be what she always needs in these kind of fights, and that's pace, pressure, and aggressiveness. I think Alexia Thainara is a pretty formidable fighter on the feet as well. But I think ultimately Molly McCann should have a little bit more lightning in her punches, and Thainara should be looking to avoid those exchanges at all costs. I see a lot of people going back and forth on this one, and I think ultimately the safe pick is going to be Alexia Thainara. But I ain't show up to the show to be safe, ladies and gentlemen. I'm taking Molly McCann here. I just think this is a little bit of a hype job, despite knowing Molly McCann's deficiencies and knowing where she comes up short. I think this is going to be a little bit too soon for the debutante. How you feeling, Sean?
Honestly, it's really, really close for me, and I'm picking Alexia to win, but it's only because, and how many times have I mentioned this on the show, that I feel that it's the history, it's experience that gets you wins, and I would have picked Meatball, I really would have, but for me in this situation, I I do see what you're saying with Molly getting submitted is sort of in a situational place. But I feel like there have been a lot of situations. I feel like she leaves herself open way too much to get taken down and taken to the ground and being capitalized for in a submission game. I don't think her grappling is that great. I don't think her submission, her defense really in general, is too much better since taking like that year off to really and go down in weight. For me, I feel like this is one where this would almost hype up this division. So it's tough, man. I hate picking against experience. I really do. But I just think in this situation, it's almost like Alexia has done such a great job with her grappling that someone like Meatball in her, not her home, but almost feels like a home to her. They're going to cheer her like crazy. That this would be a statement or, a real stamping for Alexia. And I think it's a really, really close fight. I really do. And I think the longer it goes, the more it becomes Meatball's fight. I think especially she will feed into the crowd like crazy. She loves this shit. So for me, it's super, super close. But it's just one of those situations where it reminds me of the, what's that fight with Meatball? The one she just lost against Julija, whatever the fuck.
Stolyarenko.
Yeah, I'm never gonna say that name. So that fight, I thought that was Meatballs all day, and then just another situation where she got caught, and then she did like the worst possible thing to get out of the submission, and led her to losing. And that was a fight I don't think 90% of us were picking Molly to lose. So it was just like, if you're gonna lose in a situation like that where you literally forced your own loss, what is Alexia gonna do in the first
But
5
that was the
minutes?
best Julicia's ever looked in the
I know
UFC.
that. But what if this is the best Alexia's ever looked? Do you really think it's something where Molly can compete at that point? So like I think this is one where Alexia's looking at this as a golden opportunity. Be one of the biggest names in women's MMA. Not saying talent wise, but everyone knows who she is if you're a UFC fan. So it's like this is a huge statement, especially in her home crowd. And someone like me, maybe this is a personal thing to me. I love going to if this is baseball, football, whatever, going on the road and beating you in your own fucking in your place, in your home, because it means that much more to me when we go home that I just beat you in front of your favorite people. So I think this is one where Alexia might have that, that little chip on her shoulder. So I have it by round 2 submission. But if this fight goes to round 3 in any way, it's Molly's all day.
I love the way you broke that down. I'm gonna give a shot at another one of those cycle parlays, and my sub pick is Thainara by sub. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there. But we'll get to that later.
Mine's the
Next,
opposite. Mine
oh,
mine is
McCann
Alexia,
by knockout.
but McCann by knockout is
Wow.
my
Okay.
all.
I like that. I like that. Next up, we move on to the welterweight division, a fight in which we have fire and ice, a fight in which we have inactivity versus overactivity. We've got Gunnar Nelson minus 118 going up against Kevin Big Mouth Holland plus 110. And of course, there's dynasty implications because I'm on the Kevin Holland side, right? He leads the league in activity, even if it doesn't always turn into W's for my guy. He's going to go out there and fight for me, God damn it. And we need that. We need that. Those numbers on the record, ladies and gentlemen. But I say all this to say, Sean, you get the pleasure of leading the dance in this one, and I can't wait to see
Dude,
which
at
way
that
you
point, you
go.
basically just went first. You were like, I'm going to go first. Psych. You go.
Exactly. I'm doing the back and forth thing. I went
Yes,
first
yes,
last time.
yes.
You go. It's your turn now. But
That's
I
right.
just had to set the stage because at the end of the day, there are dynasty implications. Go ahead, Sean.
No, 100%. This is one where it's either Kevin Holland gets taken to the ground and loses, or he stands up and wins. That's how I see this fight. As simple as it gets. I love Kevin Holland when he's Kevin Holland. When he's there to win. I know he tries to, have that like little crutch in his mind of, I don't need to be a champion. I'm not here to be a champion. Yeah, you fucking are. Like, Everyone's there to be a champion. And you're talking about, I don't care if I win or lose. That's bullshit, dude. Because if you lose, you make less money. If you win, you make more. It's as easy as that. So I know it's all about the money for you. So if you win fights, like if you don't care about winning and losing, why give a fuck about who you fight and when you fight and whatever? I get punched in the face a bunch of times. It feels good. Can't wait to do it again. Like no one says that, dude. It's no one's ever walked into a fight and said, "Can't wait to lose tonight," or "Can't wait to see what happens. I don't give a fuck if I get knocked out." So I think it's a situation where if Kevin Holland fights like Kevin Holland, and the guy we expect from him when he is caring, that's the key word here, caring about himself and caring about his career, caring about what his future holds, I think he keeps his fight standing. I really do. It's Holland's biggest enemy is Holland. He lacks focus and tendency and takes fights so less seriously than he needs to and puts himself in these risky situations where eventually he gets taken down. It almost becomes like it's like in the MVP fight, when MVP was just grappling him up and taking him down. You're seeing him talking shit, but he's talking shit because he's frustrated, because he knows there's nothing he could do. And he knows that he didn't take this fight camp seriously. He didn't take the fight seriously. He didn't take it to the point where he knew how to escape the situation. Something like you were in MVP's bread and butter game, and you're out there completely lost on what's next. What can he do? Can't escape. So for me, I think someone like Gunnar Nelson.
Gunnar Henderson? Is that who you're talking about?
I don't know what's going on. Gunnar Nelson, I feel this is a fight where Kevin Holland should easily roll through Gunnar Nelson if this is the Kevin Holland I know. But because we don't know who Kevin Holland is, that's why these odds are probably him being the underdog here. Because Gunnar has a chip on his shoulder and Kevin doesn't. And I think if this fight stays standing, Kevin Holland all day. Eventually, he will pick him apart. He's got crazy combinations, crazy length, and I think that's something Gunnar just won't be able to handle for 15 minutes. If Gunnar takes this to the ground, Holland will never get back up because he will eventually quit on himself, and it will be Gunnar's all day. So I wouldn't be surprised if Gunnar is the favorite, but I have to believe Holland needs to win this one because at this point, he's lost 4 out of his 6. I know it's only been like a year and a half time frame of all those fights because this is his 20th UFC fight already since he joined in 2020. But still, 4 out of 6 and potentially 5 out of 7 doesn't really get you much further in the UFC game. So I think he needs this one. I think he has to actually give a shit for this one. And I wish he would give a shit for all of them because if we got the real Kevin Holland, who's still pretty young in this game, he could really turn into something super dangerous in this division. But I think he has I think he has what it takes to do enough in this one, get himself back on a pay-per-view card, and I think he'll win this one via knockout. I say second round as well.
I love the way you broke this one down because it is about the mental game, but I also think it really does come down to the physicality of both these fighters. I think at this weight class at 170, I think it's going to be hard for me to imagine a world where Gunnar Nelson gets easy takedowns in this fight. I think the biggest issue at middleweight is you're fighting grapplers who their strength is grappling, but also their strength is just being maybe the same size as you as far as height, but as far as actual girth and tonnage, right? This you're fighting larger fighters at that weight class than you are at 170. And I think I like Kevin Holland big time in this fight. I agree, though. It's a two true outcome fight. Either we're going to get a sub or we're going to get a knockout. If we get it the other way around, in either way, I'll be absolutely surprised and shocked. Right? Imagine fucking Gunnar Nelson cracks him with an overhand right, or Kevin Holland goes out there and gets a triangle. Like that'll be astronomically against what our brain is telling us. But I'm ultimately picking Kevin Holland in this one. I think he could also win this fight by decision. I think it really comes down to, like you said, his approach, right? How are you going to be approaching and handling this fight? And I think I agree with you, despite the way in the facade he puts on out there, I think this does matter to him. And I think he understands the opportunity he has in front of him here. And that's why I think he's going to show up. There's something about 170 for Kevin Holland. I think he should remain at this weight class. I think it's where he will become closest to the title, despite you look at the landscape of both divisions, you could argue 185 is a easier weight class, quote unquote. But I think where the skills pay the bills, I think ultimately Kevin Holland matches up with these welterweights a little bit better than he does with the middleweights. Now, the Gunnar Nelson side of things, I think if he was a more consistent fighter, you could say that about both of these guys, but in a different way, right? I think for Gunnar Nelson, it's going out there and competing. For Kevin Holland, it's going out there and competing in the way that we expect you to. I think if Gunnar Nelson was a little bit more of a regular competitor, I think I might have a different view on him, but I think he is slick getting up there in age, right? And I think a fight that really stood out to me was his fight with Gilbert Burns, not because I think Kevin Holland is a similar opponent, but just because when I watched that fight, I was really shocked at how far away Gunnar Nelson ever was from making an impact on that fight. And I think against someone at length parity like this in this division, I'm convinced, man. Give me Kevin Holland to have a resurgence here at welterweight, but I won't be surprised either way. God damn it. We move on to the motherfucking co-main event, ladies and gentlemen. We got Yanni Blackjacks, Yanni Thrills, motherfucking Jan Blachowicz plus 235 going up against the 6th ranked, the Black Jag, Carlos Ulberg minus 225. Now, I love that I get to go first on this fight because this is a crazy, crazy fight. Now, what I love the most about this fight is diving into these two guys' career, right? And seeing the differences between the two, right? So Carlos Ulberg, 7-1 in the UFC out of City Kickboxing. Jan Blachowicz, 12-7-1 in the UFC. And what I love about his career is a lot of those wins came in succession, right? Back to back. Now let's hear this man's record. Let's hear the competition, right? Notable wins. Sokaju and KSW in 2011. Let me repeat that to y'all. Sokaju in 2011. To give you a timeline here, Sokaju came onto the MMA scene by knocking out Little Nog. Rogerio Nogueira, ladies and gentlemen. That feels like 40 years ago, if you ask me, ladies and gentlemen. But that's the era Jan Blachowicz comes from. Kind of crazy to think about. He lost to Sokaju and then ended up winning in the rematch in KSW, which is another thing. Once again, you look at the outcomes in these fights, kind of crazy how it all plays out. But let's listen to these wins, right? Sokaju, Houston Alexander, another throwback MMA name, Alir Latifi, Devin Clark, Jared Cannonier, Jimmy Manawa, Nikita Krylov. Now, here's where things get interesting. Luke Rockhold, Jacare, Corey Anderson, Dominic Reyes, Israel Adesanya. Now, obviously, Adesanya fighting out of City Kickboxing is kind of easy to make that parallel, right? Oh, you know, this style works against this style. And I think that's a very fair way to look at this fight. I think Carlos Ulberg's biggest win in his career is against Volkan Ozdemir, which in my opinion is not a good name to be your biggest win, despite the fact that I probably rate Volkan higher than most people do. Shout out Bald Gang. But as far as this matchup, as far as this fight, I'm a little torn, right? I think in his prime, if this fight was a couple years ago, I think if this fight wasn't Jan Blachowicz coming off of double shoulder repair surgeries, I definitely would be picking him here. I think styles make fights, and I think his ability to frustrate Ulberg, land low kicks, and just drag him into a fight that he doesn't want to be competing in, I think I would favor Jan Blachowicz here. But ultimately, I think there's a big difference in the speed of these two athletes. And I think it's even larger than the gap that it was with Adesanya, because Adesanya was moving up to light heavyweight in that matchup. Carlos Ulberg is an established light heavyweight. And I think throughout his career, he's shown that he's gonna throw that motherfucking jab. And in my opinion, that's been Jan Blachowicz' biggest kryptonite in these fights, even in fights that he's won. A lot of the success against him is being able to build off that jab. And I just see Carlos Ulberg landing a check hook at some point and putting an end to this fight. But I'm going to be real, man. Even though this is a dynasty fight, and even though my fighter is Carlos Ulberg and your fighter is Jan Blachowicz, I kind of want Ulberg to win. I mean, I kind of want Ulberg to lose here. I kind of want the OGs to come shine through. But I can't pick it, unfortunately. I'm picking Carlos Ulberg by knockout, especially because MMA, especially when it comes to being time worn, and what it means to be that kind of a veteran in this game at this point. I think time is a cruel mistress, and I think Carlos Ulberg is just going to have youth on his side.
Honestly, I kind of look at this as a Stipe Miocic sort of situation here, coming back to fight John Jones. Not that I'm saying Ulberg is John Jones. I just think I'm looking at it in a way of the physical stature of Jan Blachowicz now. The surgeries, hasn't fought in 2 years. The cancellations, it's been a long time. How he looked against Magomed, how he looked in his last fight, which was against Alex Pereira, which was Alex Pereira's first fight at light heavyweight. And look at the trajectory since that moment for Alex Pereira. And we're talking about a whole career here of light heavyweight. You know, what was that, 5 fights for Pereira since? 6?
Yep.
5, 6? So it's you know, I think it's like Stipe's situation where he's coming back after all this time. I firmly believe Ulberg will win. I think Jan retires. I really wanted to see Jan versus Yuri, but I think now at 42, I just don't. If Jan wins, then yes, I think you do get Jan versus Yuri, just so that you kind of can keep that. Finally, can bring that fight to fruition after all this time. But I think Jan's only path is what he's always been great at, and it's that abusing that front leg kick, that front leg, and with the leg kick. And I think that's something where Ulberg exposes it very much, and I think that's something where easily Jan could take advantage early on that, exposing the leg, breaking it down, beating it up, and just slowly pushing forward until Ulberg kind of cracks open, but cracks, to the point where he gets desperate. But I think Ulberg, it's a good test because I'm a believer in Ulberg, but I don't think when he was supposed to fight Jamal Hill last year, I thought that was way too much of a gap and a way too big of a step to just jump in and fight someone like Jamal Hill at that time. I think this is a good one. I think this is a big name, definitely towards the end of his career. I love Jan Blachowicz, and I'm praying he can win this fight. But I just think there's a time and a place, and I think this is the time where Jan will put everything he has into this fight to win. I really do think so. I just think that he knows it. I think he knows it definitely. He's not going to announce it yet, but I think he knows at 42, this is potentially his last one. And if he gets absolutely, manhandled out there, that we're talking about a time where you drop the gloves. It's like one of those situations where when you get to that point in your career, you got to ask yourself, can I win the championship? Can I win? Can I do this 2-3 fight run at 42 and become a champion again? Because I bet you he believes he could beat anyone still at this time. But it's just one of those where you ask yourself, can I really do 3 more fights against light heavyweights where each fight's going to take me for probably a good 6 months to a year to come back from? And if he wins, I think it's guaranteed to throw him in with Yuri. That fight's been way too long in the making. And it'd be good to have that one. For Jan's sake. Jan deserves that fight. But if you lose, it's almost like, what are you fighting for now? I would love to see him continue fighting. I just don't think he would want to do that to himself with all the surgeries and all the shit he's been through. For me, I think it's Ulberg's quickness that's just going to be way too much for Jan when it gets to that second and third round. I think it's very beneficial that it is only 15 minutes for someone like Blachowicz. I think Ulberg can piece him up very early on after the first round. And I think this is one where it's just Ulberg's fight to lose, to be completely honest, with the speed and the mixing up of fight style. So I pray that Jan can beat up the leg early and just slowly piece him apart. But I think Ulberg wins this one via decision. I had it in my notes as knockout in the third round, but I think Jan's too much of a fucking psycho and too much of a fucking leader and a veteran to go down. I think he'll put up a hell of a fight like he did against Pereira, like he tried to do against Magomed, and I think he'll last the 15 minutes. But
I'll die on the hill that he won that fight against Magomed. God
me too.
damn it.
I thought he did win. I thought he did win as well. So I think, but I do think this is the end of Jan Blachowicz, unfortunately. And if it is, and we don't get to talk about it, hell of a career.
Hell
He's
yeah.
a great champion, great person. And but we'll see.
A
Hopefully
champion we never saw coming, right? Somebody that we never was like, hey, that guy's going to be champ. This motherfucker's late career run came back from at one point losing 4 in a row, if I'm not mistaken, in the UFC. So that's a great shout and great. Once again, you can't point out more guys who wrung the towel dry of their potential. He's one of those guys. I also want to mention before we move on to the main event, we've seen Carlos Oberg implode in that way, like against Kennedy and Nzechukwu, right?
Yes.
That's the path to victory here, and low key, that's what we're both kind of rooting for, right? But I think Carlos Oberg is gonna get the win, like you. We move on to another dynasty head to head, but this time it's the main event, ladies and gentlemen. We've got the young guard versus the old guard. Now, Sean, you get to lead the dance with this one. I know you do your homework, right? So I know this doesn't come as a surprise to you, but I gotta say right off the top, before I get a chance to discuss this fight, I could not believe that Leon Edwards was 33 and Sean Brady was 32. Doesn't that fuck your mind up a little bit?
It does, especially knowing how long Edwards has been here. That is crazy. It's crazy. It happens, Sometimes careers just take longer. But
yep. Plus 140 Leon Edwards, minus 155 Sean Brady. Who you got, Sean?
Crazy, huh? I was talking about this at work today because I have a friend who we talk MMA all day long. And it's
hey, you told him you got a podcast? Did you tell him?
I did tell him. Right? He probably watches with how often I talk and tell him about it. But to me, I find it funny because I always laugh at these sort of moments because it's like if Leon Edwards didn't fight at 5 a.m. like he claims, he might have been able to beat Bilal. I'm not saying that he would have. I'm just saying there was a chance. And at that moment, if Sean Brady was next for someone like Leon Edwards, which he wouldn't have been, I bet these odds would have been like minus 400 for Leon Edwards against someone like Sean Brady. But it's just one of those where I feel like the second you lose, how many times have I said this? The second you're a champion and you lose, it's like automatically, fuck them, get them out. Kill the odds. Let's get the new in. And honestly, this is a great fight. It is. I wish this was a fight that had been booked originally.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think this would have been really, really good. I think I'm picking Leon to win by a unanimous decision.
Oh, damn!
I think, and I had it at first. I have it crossed out. Brady to win, but I have it. I just feel that Leon still wants that belt back. I really do believe that. Like, Leon challenges me because it's one of those where he quits on himself so easily. And it's like the second I feel that he doesn't feel he can win the fight, it's almost like he begs for the sob story. Obviously, we all know about that, the coach and, don't want to bully your son. I get that. But I felt like that was the fight the whole time against Bilal. I felt like after that first round, from rounds 2 through 5, I felt that Bilal was holding him down. And then by rounds 4 and 5, it almost felt like Leon had just accepted.
Couldn't disagree with you more. Leon won round 5.
Yeah. I at the end, sure, but it's almost like it's like a victory lap for you. Like, all right, I didn't get swept because it wasn't close. I felt it was just almost like you had to put up something, but it was one of those where I felt the whole time, like I've seen Leon way better than this, and I felt Leon was so sluggish, and I want to believe that it's because that card was bullshit to put. To put it at 5 a.m., that's craziness. You have all those fighters stay up all night, for us to watch it in our time, which I get how TV and all that shit works. But imagine a fighter. Imagine you're a champion. You're fighting in your hometown, and they're like, Yeah, you probably step on around 4:50 to 5:20 a.m. You'll be like, fuck that. Dude, I'm sleeping. Like, I'm used to going out at 10 p.m. to 12 p.m. 12 a.m. Why am I stepping out to fight for my belt on the line at 5 fucking a.m. on a Sunday? Fuck all that. Because of what? I got to go to the hospital and I'm checked out by 10 a.m. Now I have the whole day to fucking unswell my eyes and whatever the fuck happened to me. Wake up for the first time if I get knocked out. Fuck all that. Hell no. I'm not sleeping all day. I would hate that fight. So I feel for Leon in that respect. I do. But I do feel that in this situation, I think Brady has super solid striking. I think he has a style that can be really simplistic though at times. And I feel that in order to compete effectively with someone like Edwards, he's gonna have to do his best to be super uh have I always blank on these words. Be very variable. Mix in everything you got. It can't just be toe to toe against someone like Edwards. I think Edwards is way too competitive for that. I think he's been at the highest level. I don't think this is relatively close when it comes to competition for the highest level that Leon has faced. I think for Sean Brady, this is probably the highest level he's faced, and I think that's always a big factor in all these sort of fights. Edwards has faced Kamaru, and what people thought Kamaru was still in his prime in that moment. And maybe not in the third fight, but it still was Kamaru Usman. Then you beat, dumb fuck Colby, and and you end up, getting your ass handed to you by Bilal. But it's still all the top tier guys, number one contenders, the best of the best. Someone like Sean Brady on short notice is one where you kind of get Leon Edwards back in the win column and hopefully fighting for a belt again, because I think that's what the UFC wants. I think the UFC wants to do everything it can to take the belt away from Bilal. And if Shavkat can't do it, you have a backup plan there. And if Shavkat can do it, a fight between Shavkat and Leon Edwards is a great fight. So I think this is almost like a fight in the making. And not to take away from Sean Brady, because Sean Brady will be there. But this is like, for me, that first taste for someone like Sean Brady to face a champion level fighter. I think Sean Brady's great. And I'm a huge fan of Sean Brady. I just think when he fought Bilal, I don't think Bilal was championship level yet. I think when he fought and beat Gilbert Burns, I was like, that's a good starting out taste right there. Now you're facing a former champ who people felt that he should have still been champ if he was really himself against Bilal. I think this is a fight that's so good for Sean, even in the loss, because I think Sean Brady will fight for a title one day. And I just think right now it's still Leon Edwards' time. And I would love to see Sean Brady fight again. And maybe it's even against Kamaru Usman whenever the fuck he decides to come back. So I think for this one, I'm picking Leon by decision. But I have a really good feeling. Well, I think it's also because of the extra motivation of being at home. He loves to fight at home because he needs that crowd support. But I think this is one where it's a very, very good fight. I just think it's going to be just enough for Edwards to get it done. But Brady won't be too far behind.
I love the way you broke this one down because this fight confuses the hell out of me too. I'm not gonna lie. I think Leon Edwards is a three-tool player in a way that Sean Brady isn't, and I think that's also why I'm picking Leon Edwards here. It's so weird though, right? Because I think at the peak of his power, Sean Brady could go out there, take Leon Edwards down multiple times in the first round and submit him in the first round. Like I think he has that level of grappling and that level of dominance in this division. His strength is always overstated, but I just need to restate it. This motherfucker has the Khabib-isms. You look at the back, right? He got the turtle shell on his motherfucking his back. It takes him, hey, you'll miss half of a commercial if he's walking by that TV. Like this motherfucker is huge for this weight class. But what puts me off about Sean Brady in this matchup is yes, he could go out there and take Leon Edwards down and submit him. That's easy to think about. But can he hang on the feet with Leon Edwards? And I think the mental pressure, more so than the actual skills, is what's going to make the difference for Leon. I think Leon is somebody who has problems of his own pushing that gas tank and being an active fighter, so to speak. I think he is a very negative fighter in the way that he's looking to negate the things you're trying to do more so than looking to capitalize on his own moments, right? The moments where he's flashing the pan, knock people out, it almost seems like it surprises him too, right? It almost seems like, oh shit, I could do that too. But that's the frustrating thing about watching Leon Edwards and picking him in this fight too, right? Because we could see a world where he goes out there and really leans on his skills and is the more active striker, and he really styles on Sean Brady. But because of the way he fights, I think it's going to be a more reserved fight. And I think looking back at the tape, what really changed my mind about this fight, like you said, was the Gilbert Burns fight for Sean Brady, because there was so many ugly moments, right, of just falling into the clinch and hoping like, oh, fuck, man, I'm so glad I don't have to strike anymore. And having that mentality against someone like Leon Edwards is just poison, right? You're going to find yourself in a spot where it almost feels like Sean Brady's doubt in himself creeps in more so than the reality of how the fight's playing out. I think we've seen him have those mental implosions against guys like Michael Chiesa, right? It didn't even lead to a win in that fight. But the way he's able to be frustrated whenever he's not having the fight he wants is fascinating to watch when you consider that that's what Leon Edwards is king at, right? Even in the Kamaru fights, right? It's really about forcing you to fight the fight that you don't want to fight. And I think that's a great place to start a foundational game plan against Sean Brady. Now, it's really going to come down to, like I said, where his grappling defense is. You pointed out the short notice nature of this fight. He was supposed to be fighting three-name Jack Della Maddalena, and that's a completely different fight. So I'm worried, but obviously we always train the phases of the games and make sure you're ready for MMA, and I think that's what makes the difference here. I think Leon Edwards should be able to mix the martial arts better, but man, this is a fucking electric fight. I think no matter what, every second of this fight, we're all going to be tuned in and really dialed in to see what happens, right? Because that's the magic of MMA, right? We could see all these different outcomes in our head, but they still need to come to fruition on the night. And I think this is going to be a fascinating fight to watch, even if it's a 25-minute decision. So give me Leon Edwards diffusing the bomb of Sean Brady, and I didn't expect both of us to be picking that today.
You know what, to be honest, though, I would not mind if Sean Brady wins because I would love that for him. But I just still feel in this moment, it's like the opposite of the Jan Blachowicz one, where I want Jan to win, but I'm picking Oberg. For me, if Leon wins, great, good for him. But at the same time, I would not mind seeing Sean Brady.
Yeah, I want him to win. We need new
5.
contenders. We need new
Yeah, from
contenders in this
5,
division.
he could potentially go to like 2 with this win. You know, beating a number 1 contender, that would be right there for him. So it would be great for him.
Great shouts all around. It's only right, Sean, that before we get out of here, we do our Dynasty MMA draft. You have the first pick. So I set the stage in the most non-anticlimactic way possible because I know this is going to take 45 minutes. So, Sean, please do your due diligence. Take your time. Jordan Vucenic. Wow, look at that. Just right off the top. No questions asked. I love it. I love that you were able to make the pick quick. I love this puts me in a position where now I look like Sean, right? I don't know who the fuck I'm going to pick. I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do. So let's figure it out together, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways.
Honestly, I think for you, Alexia would be great. I think she's got a great future.
Yeah, that's a great shout.
Even if she doesn't beat Meatball,
yeah, even if she
I still think she's going to be great.
Honestly, that is the most highest upside fighter. I'm sorry, Caolán. I can't do it. Give me Alexia Thainara, even though I hate it. But it's okay. And I hate it for different reasons than Sean would hate it, potentially. But that's okay, too.
And I picked her. I think she's going to be great.
Great shout. Great shout. And we also both picked Jordan. So, hey, that was easy. But this is what we're looking at now. Now that we've picked our fighters, because it's a jam-packed Dynasty day, goddammit. We've got, for Sean's team, representing Team Sean, we have Loughran, Kavanagh, Felipe dos Santos. So he's already 1-1, ladies and gentlemen. Nathaniel Wood, John Blachowicz, Sean Brady, and Jordan Vucenic. Guess what all 4 of those guys have in common? They're going up head-to-head against my Dynasty guys. We have. Yeah, this is going to be a big card, dude, for all the standings. I've got Guram Kutateladze, Christian Leroy Duncan. Don't call him Chris Duncan. Mick Parkin, Chris Padilla, Morgan Charriere, Kevin Holland, Carlos Olberg, Leon Edwards, and Alexia Thainara. So that's the play. That's the card. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been here probably longer than expected. But God damn it, when we show up, we motherfucking deliver. I think this was one of the favorite episodes we've ever recorded, at least in my book, Sean. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for being a part of all the awesome shit we got going on over here at OTS. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, just remember, when you're down in the dumps, right? When you're feeling like shit, like, man, I can't believe all these things are going wrong in my life. I can't believe this has happened to me. Just remember, you were not Sean and Chris picking Miss Dubin last week. All right? You probably picked Carly Judas. So stay positive. We'll see you all next week. Peace.